We're going to look at perfect competition now, and this is an important market structure because this is the one that we usually compare everything to, because you get relatively efficient outcomes in this market. And this picture is meant to represent an example of a more perfectly competitive market. Certainly if you went to a market like this selling fruit and vegetables, you'd find that all of the vendors are selling them at similar prices. So these are the specification objectives. It looks like a lot, but it's not that much actually. So first of all, we need to look at the assumptions of perfect competition. So firstly, there are no or there are very few barriers to entry and exit, and this means that there are large numbers of buyers and sellers in the market because they can enter very easily, and no one firm or individual buyer is large enough to affect the market price. So we're going to see that they're price takers. The product that they're selling is homogeneous, so there's lots of sellers of this product and they're all selling an identical product to each other. So consumers really don't have any preference over who to buy from, and they're just going to go and get the cheapest product because they're all, identical. The only thing that's going to differ possibly is price. There's perfect information as well, so buyers and sellers have knowledge of the product and the prices. So therefore, firms cannot set a price above the market price, as no one's going to buy from them because it's homogeneous and all the consumers know that they can get the product cheaper elsewhere. So this is going to have an implication on them. They're only going to be able to make normal profit in the long run. And all firms have access to technological improvements. So what this means is that firms don't tend to engage in research and development, as if they did, other firms would be able to use and benefit from their ideas because there's perfect information in the market. So we're not going to see lots of dynamic efficiencies emerging in this market because of investment in research and development and innovation and invention. And another assumption, and the final assumption actually, is that factors of production are mobile. So we can move our resources into this market and we can move our resources out of this market very easily. So I suppose that, if they weren't mobile, that would be a barrier to entry as well. So if they're making less than normal profit, they're going to leave. And if the market is making more than normal profit, so supernormal profit or abnormal profit, and because there are no barriers to entry and everyone knows they're making supernormal profit, firms are going to move into the market. Okay, so in the short run, we can get a situation like this arising. So this is over here, the market showing demand sloping downwards, supply sloping upwards, as we'd expect, and that you learnt in year one. But this is the individual firm's demand curve. So they're a price taker, so average revenue equals marginal revenue equals demand here. This is their demand curve. They have to take the market price, and they are going to profit maximize, so when marginal cost equals marginal revenue, and that's the point at which they're going to produce output. And so this yellow box represents their supernormal profit. But because there are no barriers to entry in this market and there's perfect information, other firms are going to enter the market, so we see supply moving outwards like that, and that puts downwards pressure on the price, and eventually you settle in the long run at this point. So marginal cost still intersecting the marginal revenue curve, and that's where the profit maximizing output will be, but it's actually less than it was before. And only normal profit is made because we can see it's at that point, that's where average costs are. So they can also make a loss, but again, only in the short run, because if you're making a loss or you're making less than normal profit, you're going to leave the market and there's no exit barriers and your factors of production are mobile, so you'd leave. So what would happen in this case, the yellow box represents the loss, is that and what's most likely is, as well, because all of these firms have access to the same technology, what's very likely is that they all have really similar cost structures. They might have slightly different ones, but they're going to be on the whole quite similar to each other. And what's going to happen in that scenario is that we're going to see, sorry, I just flipped forward, we're going to see the supply curve shift to the left, and this would increase the price and increase the demand curve for the individual firm until it gets up to this point here. So eventually, where marginal cost intersects average cost is where the long run equilibrium of the market would be. But I did say a second ago that firms, this would happen because firms would leave the industry. So how would we know if this is one of the firms that's going to leave the industry, or this is one of the firms that's going to stay in the industry and wait for that average revenue curve to increase? Well, it depends upon whether the price that they're getting covers their average variable costs. Okay, so in this diagram, it's a very similar diagram, but I've just added on, or actually I've just Googled it, I didn't add on anything, but we've got average variable cost there. And we can see that the price is actually above the average variable cost. So in that case, they would shut down slowly and probably, depending on how slowly they're going to shut down, that would, other firms would leave the market, and we'd see supply shifting to the left and actually this average revenue curve shifting upwards, and then that would mean they could stay in the market because they were making normal profit. But the reason that they'd shut down slowly if their price is above average variable cost is that it is covering the cost of producing the item, and it's making some contribution towards covering the fixed costs. So you're going to have to pay the fixed costs regardless of whether you shut down or you don't shut down. So it's better to make a small contribution towards covering those costs than not. Now, if it didn't cover the average variable costs, it would actually mean that every day you're in business, you're making a larger loss than you would have made by closing down immediately. So it depends upon whether that price is above their average variable cost to whether they're one of the firms that actually leave the market or not. So there we go. If price is larger than average variable cost, you shut down slowly. If price is smaller than average variable cost, shut down immediately, because you're adding to your losses. Okay, and this is the long run position of perfect competition. And we can see that only normal profit is made in the long run, and the price is equal to marginal cost, which means it's allocatively efficient. So this marginal cost equals this average revenue, so we know that's allocatively efficient. And look as well, they're producing at the lowest point in the average cost curve, so it's productively efficient. So it all looks pretty good at the moment. So this competitive market, some of the benefits of having a competitive market is that we've got downwards pressure on costs, and so we're more likely to be productively efficient, more likely to have lower prices than a non-competitive market, more people can afford the item, large consumer surplus, so more likely to be allocatively efficient. If it's perfect competition, it will be allocatively efficient, but the closer towards perfect competition we get, the more allocatively efficient it should get. There's also pressure to provide what customers want as well. So not all competition results in price competition. It might be that firms try and compete in non-price ways. So they might provide better quality or better customer service, more choice. And this should add to allocative efficiency as well, because remember, allocative efficiency is about providing what customers want and need and matching those preferences and those needs. However, we have made some really big assumptions here. So although we've said it's allocatively efficient, we're not thinking about the possibility of external costs. So if there are external costs or external benefits, then we're going to see that the marginal social cost does not equal the marginal social benefit. So it could be allocatively inefficient if we've not taken those into account. So with positive externalities and negative externalities. And yes, on that cost curve, it was productively efficient. But the thing is that these are very small firms, so they're not going to benefit from economies of scale. So they could have been on a lower cost curve if they were benefiting from economies of scale and growing, in the long run. And they're also not going to make supernormal profit in the long run. So they're not going to be able to then invest that money back into the business and gain from dynamic efficiency. So the costs may actually end up higher than a less competitive market that has been able to gain from economies of scale and reinvesting that supernormal profit. So therefore, it might mean that there are higher prices and lower output to a market that was more concentrated. Just depends on that market.